Welcome, everyone. I'm Marianne Hollahan, Director of Content at BlastPoint. Thanks for listening in on our Spotlight series, which shines a spotlight on people who are making data actionable within their organizations. Today, we'll be talking about how to build an analytics practice. I'm joined today by BlastPoint CTO and co-founder, Tomer Borenstein. Hey, Tomer. As well as our special guest, Eugene Hamrick of Rappahannock Electric Cooperative, who I'll go ahead and introduce. Hey, Eugene. Eugene is Director of Enterprise Analytics and Innovation at Rappahannock Electric Cooperative, REC, and Brillet, where he serves to promote data-enhanced decision-making and analytics solutions that achieve maximum benefits from the use of data assets. With several years of electric utility knowledge and data science experience, Eugene brings passion to solving the bigger business problems with actionable data insights and has a unique perspective on the challenges facing electric distribution cooperatives. In 2022, Eugene was designated a top 25 thought leaders in utility analytics by Utility Analytics Institute. And I'll advance the slide here. You can see a little bit more about him, including that he's an avid music enthusiast and musician when not telling data stories. So thanks so much for joining us, Eugene.
Yeah, no, happy to be here. I'm glad to be sharing data stories with you all, with you, Marianne, as well as Tomer. I'm excited to talk about analytics here.
Awesome. All right, Tomer, I'll turn it over to you, and you can go ahead and start the conversation.
Sounds good. Eugene, first of all, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited to have this chat with you. You and I have known each other for a while, and I think we've discovered we're kind of kindred spirits when it comes to enthusiasm about data and AI and making that actionable. So I am looking forward to geeking out with you a little bit. I was hoping you can start us out by telling us a little bit more about Rappahannock and your role there.
Yeah, so absolutely. So Rappahannock Electric Cooperative, I like to say we're a big fish when it comes to distribution electric cooperatives. I think we're like the 14th largest in the nation. We're very small compared to investment-owned utilities, and it's just like not even the tip of the iceberg in terms of meter scale and details like that. But a little bit about Rappahannock Electric Cooperative. We are a distribution electric cooperative out of Virginia. We serve 22 counties, so we're very diverse. We're very spread out. Over 170,000 connections, 17,000 miles of line. So again, meter density, we're very rural, about 10 meters per mile of line, and just north of 400 employees at the co-op. So right between DC and Richmond, all the way from the Blue Ridge Mountains down to the Chesapeake Bay. A bit about what we do in terms of the Department of Enterprise Analytics and Innovation is I kind of, my title reflects one thing, but what I really look at is, I kind of see myself as the chief data evangelist. Maybe at one point I could convince someone to change my title to that, but really, my role and our team's role is to promote and enable a culture of data enhanced decision making and continuous improvement at the co-op. So continuing to innovate, think outside the box, identify ways that we can improve what we do for our membership, and also enhance or assist our employees out significantly in their efforts to help support our membership. Identifying the why behind the value of data assets and how data-informed decision-making leads to real value and better outcomes.
Yeah, totally. One of the things that I really admire about REC is that despite the relatively small size, we work with a lot of utilities, and, even some of the large utilities we work with don't have a dedicated sort of analytics practice. And the way that you at REC do things always struck me as well ahead of the curve, especially when considering your size. So, Eugene, I'm curious, why is having analytics and specifically an analytics practice at a utility is important? Why is that something that listeners should do or consider doing?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the idea of a concept that I think a statistician in the UK came up with almost more than a decade ago now, and that Gartner's really pushed, which is this concept of data is the new oil. And the value behind the data assets. It's not so much that especially with utilities, we rely on this concept of, and a lot of us do, right? Because decision making is an emotional process, no matter how much we want to believe in logic. I think a lot of us rely on these years of experience, particularly in utilities, particularly in cooperatives where there's very long tenured employees. We rely on our experience, our decades plus, our context, our understanding of the business and the business model, and our gut, which is a good thing to trust. But I think moving into some of the larger decisions we have and the disruption of the industry, particularly when we look at electric vehicles and it being a when, not an if question anymore, and supply chain issues, you can't just operate on experience and intuition. It's an industry that's been, generally speaking, a monopoly for 100 years, and it does not appear that that business model is going to be able to sustain itself moving forward. So the other side of the equation, and again, leveraging the oil as data, is a huge factor, because that fills in the rest. If you've got 50% of your pie chart being my gut intuition, my experience, my knowledge, and the other half being research, data, and insights, that really forms the full picture. And that's why we say, more informed decision making results in better outcomes. And so, but using that, I like the analogy of data is oil. Well, that's raw material. So you need a team to generate insights and contextualize that data into meaningful things that you can take action with. So you kind of see analytics as the combustion engine there that powers the vehicle, that's the business, which is kind of a big joke now because we're all talking about electric vehicles. So why are we using combustion engine analogies? But that's really the value in it. Why now? Because we're going through a disruptive technology change in our industry. And then why should you care? Because it improves processes, it makes it more efficient, it frees up hours in your day, it makes you as an employee more valuable. And then I always go back to it just results in better outcomes.
Yeah, I really like the way you put that, despite maybe the outdated analogy using the combustion engine. But really, we're a platform for helping utilities with AI and data. And despite all of the heavy duty machine learning and data engineering that goes on under the hood, they actually, one of the things that I find is the most important is, like you said, being able to turn that oil into, from raw materials to something that is actually actionable and that has an impact. So I like the way that you put that. So Eugene, tell us a little bit about the history of analytics at Rappahannock. How nascent is the practice, and what was the journey for you as you jumped into this role?
Yeah, it has been warp speed in some ways of just changes that have occurred over time. But really, utilities, I think this is a very big cornerstone for us. We're starting to really see industry-wide a change towards data and analytics. Cooperatives, I think it's really starting to turn as well in the last couple of years, really just maybe 2019 started to change. But data analytics in a lot of ways can be synonymous with change management, which generally speaking, people do not like change. Even people who say they like change don't necessarily like change. So adoption for analytics is a real challenge. For us, we recognize that we're in a unique situation being a cooperative with a full-fledged analytics department. I credit a lot of that to just perseverance and seeing the value and, again, evangelizing or promoting that value, but also very dedicated executive sponsorship and leadership at the top of that effort, seeing the value behind it and putting resources behind it because it's important. So for us, our journey has been very interesting. The challenges that data and analytics face at most industries, but particularly cooperatives, is it can be seen as no man's land. So who owns it? Does the IT department own it? Does the business unit own it? There's this space in between, and no one has real responsibility or ownership. So what we developed here is we started with a catalyst, right? Like, what was the place where we start working with data? And for us, it was Power BI. We leveraged the Microsoft Power BI platform and just said, can we take some data and visually present it and make it a self-service tool that people will interact and utilize for decision making? and it got momentum, and that momentum built from building tools in member insights focused tools to reliability focused tools to expanding to supporting all different aspects of the data across the cooperative. And as we went through that, what we realized was that there's no defined department to sponsor our own data and analytics. We also realized that cooperatives are particularly resource restricted and headcount restricted, and that's a challenge. So what we did was started with an initiative model, an analytics center of excellence model that would be successful at a cooperative. And then from there, we built it from an initiative into a full-fledged department. And really the secret sauce, which is there is no secret sauce. The secret sauce is, again, a lot of effort and collaboration between various departments and working together. But the one thing that we found that has been significant is the ability to translate technical to non-technical and back. So being that glue, the connective tissue between the IT and business units to say, the business units require this, can we translate that non-technical requirement into a technical one? And then back, from a database standpoint, from a technical standpoint, here's the technical output. What does that mean in terms of tangible value to the business? So it's been quite a journey. We've gone from, a department of 1 to a department of 2 to a department of, I think, 8 now, in a very short period of time, building around this successful model that's just worked well for us as a cooperative.
Yeah, one of the things that you highlighted, this sort of back and forth between the technical teams and the non-technical teams. And, frankly, I think that's, goes back to that activation of data. The same thing that we find is that adoption of this data and these insights is the most crucial, because you can do an amazing job technically from a data and machine learning perspective, but then if you don't get that adopted and used by the business units that need to use them to achieve an actual impact, the impact is zero. And so I'm curious if you have any thoughts on some of the ways that you have gone about this to make this flow of information and requirements gathering and feedback loops between the business and the technical side.
Yeah, so some of the ways that we've successfully done it is creating a data governance model. Some of it is official and shared outwardly. Some of it is internal to our team, but essentially we've created a almost like a diamond-shaped hierarchy of how we operate, and that concept of being the glue between the units. So we've identified, with particular data sets, particular end users, who's the data steward, who is the absolute owner from the business side, who understands for example, the budgeting software inside and out. Who is that person who knows every aspect of that from a business standpoint? And then we find and identify the system owner. So from the IT standpoint, who's the person who understands the tables, the views, the structure, the schema, the back end better than anybody else? And there are, usually several people involved, but there's usually one person who's identified as the responsible party, the person that we connect and work between. And so what we've started to do is we've created the concept of pods with particular focus areas of certain data aspects. So we have an individual who handles engineering and operations. We have a team member who handles the member insights function with member services, communication, and external affairs. We have a team member who handles the HR and finance and accounting and budgeting side from a data analyst standpoint. And then we also are filling in and building out the same thing on the data engineering standpoint. So the data engineer works closely with the IT side and the system owners for the data pipeline, the data ingestion, the orchestration. And then from the data visualization and insight side, the data analyst can work heavily with the business unit front and the data steward to pull all those things together into one unified process, and basically coordinate and, again, be that connective tissue there.
Totally. And, I'm really curious about your approach of starting at the initiative level and graduating slowly to a fully fledged practice. It's very reminiscent to me of how we think about data maturity, where there's a lot of work that needs to happen for an organization to really be considered data mature. But the road to get there is ideally iterative in my opinion, right? Because you've got this sort of maybe more old school approach of let's just get all of our data and throw it in a data lake without exactly a why. And the way that we think about data maturity at BlastPoint is iteratively using actual business use cases to build this sort of pyramid that sort of builds on previous use case and the data work that happened. So I'm curious if that's sort of similar to how you think about this initiative to fully fledged practice, or maybe that's just a loose connection. But I'm curious about your thoughts about that regardless.
Yeah. So no, that's a great question, Tomer. And I think there's a couple different aspects to it. From an initiative standpoint, it's the easiest barrier to entry really for cooperatives. Cooperatives uniquely are, we're not for profit, we're member owned. And one of the bigger challenges we have is that because of our funding and how cooperatives are generally funded with RUS guidelines, is that we're very headcount restricted. So if you have the choice between I need to hire another lineman or two more linemen, or I need to hire a data engineer, you're going to hire the lineman first, and rightfully so, because you need to have the infrastructure to support and keep the lights on for the membership. So it is very challenging. And so one of the ways to work around that or get a program started is an initiative base where you say, we're going to have a center of excellence where cooperatives were also, because we're resource restricted, we're very comfortable with the concept of you wear many hats. It's just kind of in our nature. So it makes sense to have an initiative base where you can have one or two individuals really just leading that charge, and having different team members involved from IT, from the business, and working together and having like a citizen data analyst approach, a citizen data scientist approach to starting to build something. And then once you've gotten enough momentum and proven out that value, then you can have evidence to justify supporting it and building it out further. When it comes to use cases, and from a, do I build a data lake house with all of our data in it? Again, resource restricted. It can be extremely inefficient and just be taking one pile of clothes and moving it to another place, right? So one of the ways that we've approached it is, yes, you do need to start with use cases. You do need to start with value, but you also need to come up with a repeatable framework for generating that value.
Yep.
You don't just do it all at once. You do specific use cases and have it to where you can build upon it. But how you develop those use cases, you need to have a clear process for doing it. So that way you're not reinventing the wheel every time you do it.
Yeah, speaking of a framework, I think one of the most exciting things about Rappahannock is that you're not just thinking about analytics as something that you do to improve operations, which obviously is something that we all like to use data and analytics for. But REC actually, you've used this as a differentiator and really a way to innovate, sort of really looking ahead, in 200 years as renewables and distributed energy becomes more of a thing. Obviously, utilities have to change the way that they think about their business model. And I think this is a really interesting approach that you guys are taking. So tell us a little bit more about that and drill it, and maybe just give us some more context around that.
Yeah. So again, we recognized that what we were trying to do from a cooperative standpoint in data and analytics was really unique. We had our executive team shined a light on it and realized, hey, we have something that's very different at REC, and we need to embrace it. So there's a couple different things that we honed in on and changed, and really, again, to kind of frame up the discussion, there's about 900 electric cooperatives nationwide. If you were to measure how many of those usually have a business intelligence analyst, or let's just say, one or two individuals that are proficient in using Tableau or Power BI or any other business intelligence tool, you might find one individual at a third of those cooperatives. It's very resource restricted. Again, I can't stress that enough. So that's one of the things that was unique to us, is that we had a culture where we have a few citizen data analysts, and we're able to promote that, and we're able to grow it. And our leadership recognized, okay, we're doing a lot with one or two people. What if we expand it more? And what if we let this grow? So there are a couple different components. Brillet came to be because we recognized that, one, we wanted to make sure that we had excellence, not just at all of what REC did, but on the IT side as well. So we created a subsidiary called Brillet, which stands for Brilliant IT, a subsidiary of REC where we could really build out the IT function, the cybersecurity function, and the data and analytics function, and find a way to do so without maybe having as strict of a headcount restriction on the REC side, and truly have the resources necessary to support all of the infrastructure and IT and analytic needs of REC. But then what Brillet gave us in doing that, not only the ability to expand and support REC, but to find ways, because Brillet is a wholly owned subsidiary and can operate for profit, we can now take some of the things that have worked really well for analytics at a cooperative, which is unique to us and is something that a lot of other cooperatives are seeking the answers for and haven't necessarily found what works. We basically said, hey, it's working here. What if we could share that with our other cooperatives? And that's one of the cooperative principles, is sharing and supporting other cooperatives. Now, of course, there's a difference between I give you a couple hours of my time versus 40 hours a week. So we do have to have, a certain type of financial component to it. But it's really about, not only supporting our members, but supporting members of the entire cooperative network. So that Brilliant gave us that opportunity to help fulfill that. And that being one of the missions that our department has is how can we help support our cooperative peers, and again, getting the most value out of their data assets for their employees and their membership.
Yeah, so can you tell us, Brillet is a fairly nascent organization. I'm curious about sort of the initial experiences that you've had taking this concept, this framework, to other co-ops, and what the experience and reactions have been so far. What are the common use cases that you're seeing sort of bubble up to the surface, and where do you see this going from here?
Yeah, so we have had some engagements on that front already, several conversations, and we actually have a cohort that we're a part of where we try to identify what are the critical success factors for distribution electric cooperatives. What are the top five? Give me a top five list of what are the most important things to you in your current and future state. Then there are a couple things that come to the surface. The three main things are member engagement, which also entails member satisfaction. Then operational excellence, primarily focused on reliability, but also grid improvement, grid enhancements. And then cost reduction, so efficiency and optimization in terms of reducing costs for membership. There are a lot of different use cases that come to mind, some that we've deployed, some that we're developing. But really, in an ideal situation, what we'd like to do is create managed service solutions or subscription-based models where cooperatives that don't have the resources can easily access these tools to help support their membership, and create turnkey solutions around member insights, around cost reduction, around reliability enhancement. And so some of the specific use cases that have come up are things like line loss. It's a phenomenon that you cannot avoid. You purchase this much electricity, heat, voltage, amps, you're going to lose some of it along the way. But how much you lose, there's a certain line where you can be more efficient. And so what we did was we combined our meter data management system and our SCADA system and aligned it with purchasing and invoicing to identify some areas where line losses are far more inefficient than they should be. For example, we have 5% losses across the board, which is not terrible, but we have particular circuits. So through this project and through these insights, we identified 20% losses on a single circuit. We're losing a fifth of that electricity we buy just by inefficiencies. So turning that around gave us the opportunity to save huge dollars for our membership and put it in the work plan and get a resolution around it. Those are the kind of use cases that we look to build around. Electric vehicles are another huge item. How can we forecast which distribution transformers can handle an EV on it? and can handle 2, can handle 3, and which ones are, we're going to take a 30-year asset and turn it into a 5-year asset because it's just going to be completely overloaded. Those are the type of insights that are at the top of mind for cooperatives right now with some of
Mhm.
these industry changes that are occurring.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating all of the different, I mean, really analytics and data can be applied to so many different areas of your business. And, that's a great example. We're a customer slash member AI platform. I'm curious if you can tell us about any kind of success stories or cool things that you've built around member satisfaction and engagement. Obviously, I'm leading us towards a particular solution that I think is really cool that you guys put together. It would be interesting to chat about.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm so happy you asked because just a little bit more on my background. So my undergrad is in history. So I love research. It's actually my first passion, and numbers just kind of something I never thought I'd be good at. I was actually terrible at math all through high school, and now I'm like, I love math. But really, I started as a research analyst at REC as well as the contact center. And so behavioral sciences and member insights is like my go-to in terms of data science. So some of the things that we've done at REC and Brillet is developed models around particular surveys, nationwide surveys like JD Power, and their syndicated study for residential electric utilities. And for those who don't know, it's a nationwide study with cooperatives, municipalities, and investment-owned utilities, about 145 utility brands nationwide. So some of the things that we've done is we've developed a way to easily take the data that we receive and other utilities receive from the study and contextualize it and generate quick insights in terms of where are your strengths, where are your opportunities, and have that as the way you can easily extract what actions to take next. And the beauty of the survey, also kind of one of the more frustrating parts, is there's about 800 individual variables. It's hard to cipher through that. But the benefit is that you have very actionable information as to what is it we can do to change this, to improve this. So a very specific example of what we've done using this platform and this type of model is a 3-step data-driven strategies followed by solid execution and leading to incredible results. So a key area we identified is our reliability was not where we wanted it to be. Our SAIDI and safety scores were not great, but what we found was that keeping members informed was a way to, while we work on those reliability improvements and continue to dive into analytics there, keeping members informed in that member experience was the key to us to maintaining a very high reliability satisfaction. Because when your power is out, you need to know, should I wait 30 minutes? Is this going to come back on? Is it going to be 2 hours? Should we go to Applebee's and figure out dinner? Or is this going to be a couple days and we need to figure out a hotel situation?
Mhm.
Members want information to make a decision. So what we did was we took that, we realized that was a cornerstone for us, and we created a KPI around outage text alerts. And we said, estimated restore times, even a global one, even something that is relative, helps members make that decision. So we put a campaign and a targeted marketing and member segmentation model around that, promoting outage text alert enrollment. And we were able to increase it over a 2-year stretch about 10% enrollment and had a huge amount of success with that, resulting in 2021, we finished 9th in the nation in keeping members informed during
Wow.
an outage.
That is awesome. One of the things that I love about my job is that we get to bring this type of data and these insights, and now we've done this enough that we've got a lot of these success stories under our belt, and it's always so satisfying to see data have such a tangible impact like that, like in the way that you're describing, because I feel like as technical people who are focused on bringing data and AI to, people who are maybe not necessarily coming from that background and organizations that maybe aren't well versed in that as well, I think a lot of times data can be sort of nebulous and abstract. So I think quantifying and sharing these kinds of success stories is so critical for for the entire industry, if you ask me. Which is why we're doing interviews like this. But yeah, it's great to hear about these kinds of success stories. So, we talked a little bit about your analytics practice and your philosophy around bringing that to other co-ops and utilities. For anyone listening that is interested in taking this back to their team and either continuing to build or starting to build an analytics practice in their utility or organization, what kind of advice do you have for them?
Yeah, no, great question there, Tomer. So there's a couple different things that we've got outlined, and I think it's on the slide here, that have been really helpful for us building out this platform and building out this approach for distribution electric cooperatives. Um, there's a what we call STAR, which is Strategic Technology and Analytics Roadmap, which is shown here, showing 5 key areas that we focus on building out as foundational for whether it be an initiative, whether it be a full-fledged department. These seem to be the key areas to build out, which is a built on the idea of people, process, and technology, if you really boil it down. But use cases, it does start with value. You do need to have tangible value for the investment you make. Data governance, which is closely and akin to risk mitigation. We have Bob, who's retiring tomorrow, and Bob's the sole owner of inspections, and he's got 5 versions of the same inspection spreadsheet on his desktop in Excel. Which version of that is the truth? And things done on post-it notes. So data governance is really critical to quality data management, and also making sure we avoid that risk. Technology, you've got to have, of course, the right technology stack in place and capabilities to achieve what you want to achieve. You have to have the right people, right analytic talent, and right mindset around using data. And then organizational readiness, you've got to have the right skills, tools, and resources for people to use data in their day-to-day decision making. So education and outreach is extremely critical. So my recommendation is to build around those 5 key areas, and really find a way to start an initiative and grow from the center out, right? In terms of getting started, 5 key things. Framework is critical for repeatable success. Again, your value is going to come from the use cases, but if you don't have a way of routinely doing things, you're piecemealing it, and it'll get very spread out. You'll start having scope creep and inability to move forward in the program. Know your why with analytics and promote it. It's really critical, as we said and just a moment ago with the member insights example. You need to tie measurable success to the things that you do. If you've built a really great application, a really great dashboard, really great insights, and it resulted in this improvement for the business, you need to tell that story and tell that data story, and also align it to the strategic plan. There's a reason that your leadership team created that document. Align those 2 things. Resources. This one's really interesting. It's not either or, it's both. So don't forget to look within, don't forget to look externally, but don't be afraid to hire non-technical. In some instances, we've made hires. We had a first-class lineman who's been at the co-op for 10 years that's transitioning from lineman to a data analyst, and also aspiring to be a data scientist one day. And then what we did was we gave him an opportunity to work with the team for part-time, and it was able to grow into that. We hired an HR talent acquisition analyst who's never used Power BI before, and has come in here and built, I think, 3 or 4 dashboards in 2 months. So don't be afraid to hire people that are outside of the technical realm and grow that. I think it could be really successful because the business knowledge is as critical. Number 4, as mentioned, technical to non-technical translation is where the magic happens. That's also where a lot of things break down. So you can find a way to be the glue or find a way to translate that. That's very critical to success. We found that to be really helpful. And last but not least, start somewhere. Find your catalysts. For us, it was, hey, just give me a latitude and longitudes of substations and show me outage count by substation on a map. And we did that, and it got support at senior management level, and then it just grew from there. And then we just had idea after idea after idea. So if you start somewhere, sometimes build it and they will come. Does happen. Sometimes it doesn't. But if you start somewhere and then share your story, I think you're going to have a lot of success.
Awesome. I think these are all really great points. And just to sort of hammer in that last one a little bit more, a lot of utilities that, when we start talking to them, they tell us, oh, our data is just so bad. There's no way that we can do anything. It's going to take us years and millions of dollars to do anything. What do you have to say to people who feel that way?
Yeah, I think it is a challenge. Data quality, especially because and it's not just cooperatives, but a lot of industries don't have someone assigned to ensuring that the data has a certain level of rigor around it and validation. It can be a big challenge. I think the reality is, not all data is good data, but all data can be essential to solving a problem. And what I mean by that is if you have, I'll stick with the metering data because that seems to be a huge issue for a lot of cooperatives, blank values, null values, missing reads. We only have, daily reads. We don't have AMI, or we don't have hourly data. Oh, we only have hourly data. We don't have 15-minute data. There are definitely techniques that you can use to identify and leverage the most out of that data, even if it's not perfect. So starting somewhere is really critical. It may not result in an idealized, perfect silver bullet answer, right? But it does move the needle closer to better outcomes than you would if you did nothing.
Awesome. Well, I could keep going probably for 3 or 4 more hours, but I think this is about the time that we have. And I just wanted to say again, Eugene, thank you so much for coming on. This has been great. And I think, really important for other utilities and organizations in general to hear, especially in regulated spaces like these that are really just now starting to catch up to, hey, data, AI, and analytics is really important. And so just wanted to say thank you again for coming on.
Thanks, Summer. Really appreciate you guys having me here.
Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks to everybody who's listening for joining us as well. You'll see our email addresses on the screen. If anyone has any questions or comments, just wants to chat more about what you've heard today, feel free to send us emails, and we're excited to continue the conversation. So thanks again so much, Eugene. This was a great conversation and hope to hear from you all soon. Thanks.